Hello, everyone. The main character in today's story is a beautiful woman whose life was tragically short. She was found completely naked, with her hands bound behind her back, hanging from a rope over the balcony of a luxurious mansion. Her death was so bizarre it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. But what truly shocked the public was the police's conclusion. This wasn't murder, it was suicide. That verdict immediately sparked a wave of controversy. A renowned forensic pathologist with 56 years of experience stated he had never seen a case this strange, and he strongly doubted the police's ruling. The story begins at the Spreckels Mansion, located in the town of Coronado, California. The REE estate, valued at $17 million, was originally built in 1908 by a wealthy businessman named John Spreckels. Spanning over 11,000 square feet and featuring 27 rooms, the mansion's current owner is Jonah Shacknai, CEO of the pharmaceutical company Medicus, who earned $6.4 million in 2010. On the early morning of July 13, 2011, as sunlight first touched the island of Coronado, a horrifying sight appeared just outside the mansion. Rebecca, Jonah Shacknai's girlfriend, was discovered hanging from the balcony. Adam Shacknai, Jonah's younger brother, was the one who found her. He had gotten up to make coffee, glanced outside, and froze. Rebecca was suspended in midair. Adam immediately called 911. While waiting for help to arrive, he grabbed a kitchen knife, cut the rope, lowered Rebecca to the ground, and attempted CPR. But it was already too late. When the paramedics arrived, Rebecca showed no signs of life. The crime scene was eerie. Rebecca was naked, with 4 large injuries on the right side of her head. Both of her hands were tied behind her back with a red rope. Her legs were also bound, and remnants of duct tape were still visible. Around her neck, a blue t-shirt had been tightly wrapped. The sleeves of the shirt were knotted and stuffed into her mouth. The rope she had been hanging from still dangled from the balcony, its other end secured to the base of a bed in the bedroom. Inside that bedroom, police found 2 knives, a towel, and 4 small bloodstains. On the handle of one of the knives, traces of menstrual blood were detected. Most disturbingly, scrawled in black paint on the bedroom door were the words, "He saved her." Was this really a suicide? Or was there something far more sinister being covered up? Before we dive into the deeper mysteries of the case, let's get to know Rebecca, the woman at the heart of this tragic story. Rebecca was born on March 15, 1979, in Myanmar, into an aristocratic family. She was one of 7 siblings. Due to political unrest, her family was forced to flee their homeland. They spent about a decade living in Nepal and Germany before finally settling in Austria. While attending a religious university in Austria, Rebecca met Neil, an American man nearly 10 years her senior. The two got engaged, and Rebecca followed her fiancé to the United States. Everything seemed to be going well until October 2009, when Rebecca met a visitor at work. It was supposed to be just a routine eye exam, but this man was immediately captivated by her radiant appearance and warm personality. That man was Jonah Shacknai, a well-known figure in the pharmaceutical world. His career journey was impressive. A law school graduate, a former writer, and eventually the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company with numerous patents and awards in the medical field under his name. Rebecca and Jonah quickly realized they had a lot in common. They shared a passion for sports, a love for the outdoors, and an appreciation for good food. The more she got to know him, the more she was drawn into his world. But Jonah, by 2010, was 52 years old and had already been through 2 marriages. He had 2 teenage children from his first wife. Then, in 2005, he had a son named Max with his second wife. That marriage also ended in divorce in 2008. During her relationship with Jonah, Rebecca seemed to lose sight of the fact that she was still legally married. It wasn't until March 2011 that she officially divorced Neil. After 2 years of dating, both she and Jonah felt it was time to take the relationship to the next level. By the end of 2010, Rebecca decided to quit her job and fully dedicate herself to caring for Jonah's 3 children, but being a stepmother was far from easy. Jonah's 2 older kids showed no respect for her, especially his daughter, Gabby, who made no effort to hide her disdain. The only one who seemed close to Rebecca was 6-year-old Max, who adored her and followed her everywhere. It wasn't just the kids that made things hard. Rebecca was also never accepted by the women from Jonah's past. Most notably, Dina Max's mother constantly gave her a hard time, blaming her for just about everything. The pressure kept building, and Rebecca gradually began to feel like nothing more than a glorified nanny dressed in luxury, but with no real place in this family. And still, that wasn't the worst of it. On May 30th, 2011, Jonah and Rebecca brought the kids to the Spreckles mansion for summer vacation. On July 10th, Rebecca's younger sister, Zena, flew in to visit and planned to stay for 2 weeks. But just one day later, on the morning of July 11th, an unthinkable tragedy occurred. That morning, Jonah had left the house to go work out at a nearby gym. Inside the mansion were Rebecca, her sister Zena, and Max. Around 10 a.m., Rebecca was in the bathroom when she heard a loud crash from outside. Alarmed, she rushed out to check and froze at the sight before her. Max was lying motionless on the first floor. Beside him was his scooter. Above him, a massive crystal chandelier had shattered, raining glass across the floor. Max, barely conscious, whispered one final word: the name of the family dog, Ocean. Then, he slipped into unconsciousness. Panicked, Rebecca screamed for her sister upstairs. Zena, who had been in the shower, quickly threw on clothes and rushed down as Rebecca began performing CPR. Hearing her sister's terrified cries, Zena called 911. Just minutes later, the ambulance arrived, but by then, Max had already fallen into a deep coma. One of the first officers on the scene later recalled that in her panic, Rebecca turned to her sister and said, "It's over. Dina is going to kill me." At that moment, Jonah was still at the gym. At exactly 10:24 a.m., he received a call from Rebecca, but all he could hear was screaming and chaotic noise on the other end. Sensing that something was terribly wrong, Jonah rushed home immediately. When he arrived, police cars and an ambulance were already parked outside the mansion. Max was lying motionless on the floor, about to be rushed to the hospital. Jonah was devastated. He jumped into the ambulance with his son and accompanied him to the children's hospital. There, Max had stopped breathing. But thanks to emergency resuscitation, the doctors were able to restart his heart. They later confirmed that Max's survival was only possible because he had received CPR in time. The diagnosis, however, was grim. Max had suffered a severe brain injury, facial fractures, and significant trauma to his spinal cord. Doctors decided to place him in a medically induced coma to reduce the stress on his body and buy time in the hope of saving his life. Dina, Max's mother, rushed to the hospital. When she saw her beloved son lying still on the hospital bed, his small face covered in medical devices, she broke down completely. She didn't yet know what had happened. But when Jonah spoke to her, he said, "You should be on your knees thanking Rebecca. She saved Max's life." At first, Dina didn't think much of it. But later, while speaking with the doctors, she learned that Jonah hadn't even been home at the time of Max's accident. That detail planted the first seeds of doubt in her mind. To avoid upsetting Dina further, Jonah asked Rebecca not to come to the hospital and instead stay at the mansion to handle things at home. Rebecca agreed. One of her first tasks was to take the family dog, Ocean, to a pet boarding service. That afternoon, Dina's twin sister arrived from San Francisco with her son. Rebecca picked them up from the airport. On the drive back, they talked briefly about Max's accident, but Rebecca avoided going into detail. Her distant behavior made Dina's sister feel like something wasn't quite right. The following afternoon, Rebecca took her sister Zena to the airport for her return flight to Missouri. Afterward, she went to pick up Adam, Jonah's younger brother, from the airport. Adam would soon become a key figure in this case. In 2011, Adam was 42 years old. He had graduated from the University of Memphis, but chose a very different life path. He worked on the river first as a tugboat crewman, then eventually as a captain. Normally, Adam lived in a modest apartment in Memphis and had a girlfriend. His life was a world apart from Jonah's, but that never seemed to affect the bond between the two brothers. That night, Jonah, Rebecca, Adam, and a few others went out for dinner. After the meal, Jonah returned to the hospital to be with his son, while Rebecca and Adam headed back to the mansion. Adam stayed in the guest house, an independent structure located behind the main house, forming an L shape around the property. Rebecca had had an exhausting day. Back in her room, she called her sister Mary. The call lasted 27 minutes, during which Rebecca recounted everything that had happened over the past 2 days. She also mentioned her plans to visit their parents during the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. After that call, the two sisters spoke on the phone twice more, followed by a series of text messages. After that, Rebecca got ready to take a shower and go to bed. She had to wake up at 5 a.m. the next morning to make breakfast for Jonah and bring him clean clothes at the hospital. The last message she sent to her sister read, "I have to be strong for Jonah." Up to this point, although Dina Max's mother had expressed some frustration toward Rebecca for not watching her son more carefully, her focus remained firmly on Max's condition, clinging to hope for his recovery. There had been no major conflicts between the two women. No one could have predicted that just 4 days later, Max would pass away. And even more unimaginable before that could happen, Rebecca's body would be found at the mansion. On the morning of July 13th, Adam was the one who discovered the body. After calling 911, he immediately phoned Jonah to deliver the news. Jonah later said he was in complete shock. He quickly called Dinah and told her what had happened. Upon hearing the news, Dinah's first question was, "How did she die?" Jonah didn't answer directly. Instead, he made a gesture as if stabbing himself in the stomach and said one phrase, "Asian honor." Dina assumed he was referring to seppuku, the Japanese ritual suicide performed as an act of atonement. But the nightmare wasn't over. 3 days later, on July 16th, Max succumbed to his injuries. Within the span of just 1 week, 2 deaths had occurred in the same family. The incident quickly drew massive public attention. Jonah's pharmaceutical company took a major hit, with its stock prices plunging. Within 2 months, the case was covered by nearly every major media outlet. Given the strange nature of the scene, police initially suspected foul play. They began asking a long list of questions about Rebecca's death. Her bedroom felt shrouded in mystery. On the balcony, in addition to Rebecca's footprints, officers discovered a man's footprints. On a bookshelf, they found a copy of Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. One of its pages described how to bind a nude woman's hands behind her back. Strangely, the instructions called for a red rope measuring exactly 9 feet, matching both the length and color of the rope found at the scene. But perhaps the most unsettling discovery was a message scrawled on the bedroom door. He saved her. It looked hastily written, the handwriting erratic and uneven. Then, a neighbor who lived 2 houses down from the mansion came forward with a chilling statement. He told police that on the night of the incident, he had heard a woman's terrified scream followed by cries for help coming from the direction of the mansion. With this new lead, the investigation shifted focus to Adam. Based on the circumstances, only 2 people had been in the mansion that night, Rebecca and Adam. Rebecca's hands had been bound using a specific knot, a type of nautical hitch commonly known as a mariner's knot. This is a technique frequently used aboard boats. Notably, Adam was a tugboat captain, a job requiring expertise in tying such knots. In an effort to clear his name, Adam agreed to take a polygraph test. However, the results were inconclusive, offering no clear indication of whether he was telling the truth or lying. Jonah, for his part, remained adamant that his brother was a good man who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He insisted that Adam and Rebecca had a cordial relationship and couldn't believe his brother would ever harm her. But what about Dina? Tensions between her and Rebecca had existed for quite some time, and detectives remembered that on the morning Max fell, Rebecca had said something haunting to her sister. "It's over. Dina is going to kill me." But were those suspicions justified? At exactly 10:48 p.m. on the night of the incident, Rebecca received a text message from Nina, Dina's twin sister. The message asked if Rebecca could come outside for a talk about Max's accident. However, it was clear that Nina's intent wasn't simply to talk, it was to confront Rebecca, likely to hold her accountable for what had happened. Rebecca never responded to the message. According to a witness, that night, a woman was seen lingering outside the mansion around midnight. She had long dark hair, weighed over 180 pounds, and bore a strong resemblance to Dina. Despite this, after more than a month of investigation, on September 2, 2011, the San Diego sheriff held a press conference and officially declared Rebecca's death a suicide. The stated reason: she had been overwhelmed with grief and guilt over Max's accident. These were the key pieces of evidence the police presented to support their conclusion. First, only Rebecca's fingerprints were found at the scene on the door, the knife, and the balcony railing. Second, Rebecca's DNA was found on the ropes and at the corner of the bed where the rope had been secured. No other DNA was found on any of these critical items. Third, the male footprint discovered on the balcony was determined to belong to a police officer who had accidentally contaminated the scene during the investigation. Fourth, the witchcraft book discovered in the room only had Rebecca's fingerprints on it. Investigators reasoned that if someone had staged the scene to resemble an occult ritual, they likely wouldn't have left the book hidden in an obscure spot on the shelf. Fifth, a tube of black paint was found near the scene, and only Rebecca's fingerprints were on its cap. The painted message on the bedroom door, "He saved her," was later analyzed and did not match Adam's handwriting. Furthermore, there were no signs of struggle or forced restraint. If Rebecca had been bound and dragged to the balcony by someone else, it was hard to imagine she would have shown no resistance whatsoever. On the night of Rebecca's death, a pediatric doctor named Dr. Peterson had met with Jonah and Dina at the hospital. He was direct and honest. Max's condition was critical, and it was highly likely the boy wouldn't survive. Even if he did, he would be paralyzed for life. Then, the doctor pointed out a disturbing detail. Max's injuries suggested he may have been suffocated before falling down the stairs. Shortly after this devastating news, at 12:30 a.m. on July 13th, Jonah called Rebecca. She didn't pick up. He left her a voicemail. About 20 minutes later, Rebecca listened to the message, then immediately deleted it. No one knows exactly what the message said. Jonah claimed he had simply informed Rebecca about Max's grave condition. Police theorized that upon hearing the tragic update, Rebecca was overcome by despair and decided to take her own life. But that still left one haunting question: how could her hands have been tied behind her back? The police believed that some people, when committing suicide, fear they might hesitate or regret their decision at the last minute. So they tie their hands to prevent themselves from backing out. To support this theory, they enlisted a female officer with a similar build to Rebecca to recreate the act of self-binding. As for the head injuries on Rebecca, investigators claimed that after she fell from the balcony, her body swung like a pendulum, causing her head to strike the railing multiple times, resulting in the wounds found on the right side of her skull. But Rebecca's family refused to accept that explanation. Her sister, Mary, insisted she knew Rebecca well. Rebecca had always been cheerful, confident, energetic, and full of life. Though she had been sad about Max's accident, there were no signs based on their conversations that she was falling apart. In fact, Rebecca had told her she needed to be strong for Jonah, and had even mentioned plans to visit their parents for Thanksgiving. On top of that, Rebecca was raised in a devout Christian household, attended a religious university, and firmly believed that those who took their own lives would be cursed. There was also the issue of her personal pride. Rebecca cared deeply about her image. So why would she choose such a humiliating way to end her life, especially during her menstrual period? Her personal trainer confirmed that Rebecca was always upbeat and showed no signs of being suicidal. The media, too, began to question the police's conclusion. The lawyer representing Rebecca's family went as far as to mock the ruling, saying that if this was suicide, then it was likely the strangest suicide in history, something completely irrational. Forensic pathologist Jonathan, who performed a second autopsy, declared that in his 56 years of practice, he had never encountered a case this bizarre. He stated flatly, "No woman would ever commit suicide in such a horrific way." The family then hired another high-profile forensic expert, Dr. Cyril Wecht. Wecht made several crucial observations. If Rebecca had truly hanged herself by flipping over the balcony, the force of the rope should have been strong enough to fracture her windpipe or even her cervical vertebrae. but her neck showed no such trauma, suggesting she may have been strangled to death before being lowered over the edge. He conducted experiments using a model with the same weight as Rebecca. The results showed that a body of that weight would have caused the bed where the rope was tied to be dragged forward about 50 centimeters. But at the scene, the bed had only moved 18 centimeters, far too little to support the suicide theory. Additionally, in typical hanging deaths, blood tends to pool in the lower extremities, leading to bruising in the legs. But in Rebecca's case, the bruising was concentrated on her back, suggesting she may have died while lying on the floor, not while suspended. And perhaps the most troubling question of all, if Rebecca had truly planned to end her life, why didn't she leave a farewell letter to her loved ones? Why instead scribble a cryptic and messy phrase on the door? In Rebecca's bedroom, there were 2 knives. One of them had her fingerprints on it, but the other had no prints at all. If she had used it, how could it possibly be free of any trace of her? A series of unresolved mysteries led Rebecca's family to file a lawsuit. They named Adam Jonah's younger brother, Dina Jonah's ex-wife, and Dina's twin sister, Nina, as the defendants, accusing them of conspiring to murder Rebecca. Rebecca's family filed a lawsuit with charges including armed kidnapping, aggravated assault, and murder, demanding more than $30 million in damages. However, during the investigation, the police confirmed that Dina had been at the hospital all night to watch over her son, while her twin sister, Nina, had been at a hotel far from the villa and never came near it during the time of the incident. Witness. Statements about a woman loitering outside the villa that night did not match the appearance of either of Dina's sisters. Dina had blonde hair, not very long, and weighed about 125 pounds, around 57 kilos, while the witness described the woman as having dark hair and weighing about 180 pounds, over 80 kilos. Additionally, it was peak tourist season, and there were many visitors passing by the villa, so anyone could have been the one seen outside that night. After confirming the alibis of both Dina sisters, Rebecca's family's attorney removed their names from the list of defendants and held a public press conference to apologize. In the years that followed, Dina's actions did not align with someone seeking revenge for her son's death. Instead of trying to get back at anyone, she spent a significant amount of money hiring top investigators and forensic experts to uncover the truth behind Max's death. If Dina truly believed that Rebecca had caused her son's death, she probably wouldn't have done that. On July 26, 2011, the San Diego police ruled Max's death as an accident. The police concluded that Max had been riding his scooter too fast on the second floor, lost control, and crashed through the railing. In an attempt to grab onto something, he accidentally caught the chandelier, causing it to fall, and Max plummeted from the second floor to the ground below, hitting his face and breaking his neck. However, Dina didn't believe her son could have had an accident in such a way. She hired 2 forensic experts and a private investigation firm to re-examine the scene. The 2 forensic experts came to the same conclusion. Max had facial and neck injuries and died from asphyxiation after falling. But the findings of the private investigation firm made people reconsider the entire case. Their discoveries included: the second floor of the villa had thick carpeting, so the scooter couldn't have been going fast enough to cause Max to crash through the railing. The railing was 82 centimeters high, while Max was 114.3 centimeters tall. This meant the railing was higher than his chest, and it would have been nearly impossible for him to fall over without external force. The scooter had handlebars and 1 foot always on the ground to propel it. With this setup, it would have been very difficult for Max to be pulled off the railing along with the scooter. If Max had truly tried to grab the chandelier when falling, he would have had injuries on his hands. But in reality, there were no injuries on his hands. Rebecca had said that when she found Max on the floor, she heard him calling for the family dog, Ocean. However, the 2 forensic experts firmly stated that with the force exerted on his face and neck, Max should have lost the ability to speak immediately. This meant that he couldn't have said Ocean as Rebecca described. So why did Rebecca add that detail? Could it be that she feared Jonah would blame her for not taking better care of Max, so she intentionally mentioned the dog to distract from the situation? Or worse, was Rebecca trying to hide something related to Max's fall? In 2018, during an interview with the media, Dina proposed another theory. She no longer believed that Rebecca was the one who killed her son. Instead, she thought it was possible that an intruder had snuck into the villa and caused the incident. After Rebecca's death, Jonah hired 2 armed bodyguards to protect him 24/7. He claimed it was just to avoid media harassment, but no one believed that. Could it be that Jonah truly didn't know what had happened and feared that he would be the next target? He had even written a letter to the prosecutor's office, requesting that the investigation into Rebecca and Max's deaths be reopened, but this request was denied. After dropping the lawsuit against Dina and Nina, Rebecca's family was left with only one defendant, Adam Shacknai. However, they changed their accusations, no longer charging Adam with murder out of hatred, but rather with sexual assault. The plaintiff argued that Adam had tried to sexually assault Rebecca. As she resisted and screamed, he had used a hard, smooth object to strike the right side of her head, rendering her unable to fight back. Afterward, Adam allegedly staged the scene to make her death look like a suicide. The plaintiff's lawyer pointed out that the knife at the scene had Rebecca's menstrual fluid on it and claimed that Adam had used the knife to assault her. However, the police firmly rejected this theory. According to them, the autopsy showed no signs of sexual assault. During the trial, Adam testified, saying that while Rebecca was indeed beautiful and alluring, she was his brother's girlfriend, and he had never had any ill intentions toward her. Rebecca's family then filed a lawsuit against Adam for causing death through negligence and demanded $10 million in damages. This was a civil case, not a criminal one, so if Adam were found guilty, he would not go to jail, but would only face a fine. In April 2018, despite no physical evidence linking Adam to the crime, the jury still voted 9-3 to convict Adam and ordered him to pay $5 million to Rebecca's family and $167,000 for the amount Rebecca would have provided for her parents and siblings. Rebecca's family then declared that they didn't care about the money. They only wanted to force the police to reopen the investigation. But unexpectedly, in February 2019, Rebecca's family suddenly reached a settlement with Adam. According to the terms, Adam's insurance paid Rebecca's family $600,000, and the case officially closed.